Hello everyone, today we're going to talk about slope-intercept form, and we'll go ahead and jump into vocab since it's already on the screen. Don't know why that is. A linear function is a function that creates a line for the graph, or graphs a line. That's basically a linear function. Slope is the change in y over the change in x, also known as m. Okay, that's the letter that we chose to mean slope. Don't know why it's M and not S, but you know. And then y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis, the B. Okay, again, we chose B instead of Y, just because. Okay, and knowing these letters is going to be really important later on. Okay, here's our first example. We're going to use a table to find the range of the equation y equals x plus 1. Okay, so when we have an equation, we can do a lot of things with the equations because our equations will have an x and a y. An x value of an ordered pair and a y value of the ordered pair. And it basically tells us how to create those ordered pairs. So we're going to use the table to fill this in, and then we can plot the points on the graph to see what it makes. Okay? Now because we have an equation, we're going to plug in the x values for x and solve for the y. So sometimes x's are also called inputs. You should write input right above here, okay? Write input. And then the y values that we get out are called outputs, right? Output right here, okay? So we're going to put that into the equation, and we're going to get this number out. So that's what we go ahead and do. So I want to plug in -1 for x, so -1 plus 1, that equals 0, so that means y is 0. The next we plug in 0 for x into the equation. 0 plus 1 gives me 1, so my y is 1. Now I'm going to plug in 1 for x, so I have 1 plus 1. That equals 2, so y is 2. Then I'm going to go ahead and plug in 2 into the x part, so I have 2 plus 1. That equals 3, so my y is 3. So this will give me my ordered pairs to plot. So I can go ahead and plot these now. So I have -1, 0. So I start at -1 for x and 0 for y, which is just here on the x-axis. I'm going to plot that point. Then I have 0, 1. So when x is 0, go up to where y is 1. Plot that point. When x is 1, go where y is 2. Plot the point. And 2, 3, plot the point. Okay? So those are our points. Now, what would happen if we connected the points? So if I go ahead and connect these dots, it actually creates a line. Okay? So I'm going to draw a line through those points. All right? So it creates a line. These kind of equations will always make a line. All right? So when you have an equation, you can connect the dots. Now that I have my graph, the line graphed here, I can answer these questions. Is your graph a relation? Yes, it's a relation because it's still a set of ordered pairs. Is it a function? Yes, it's a function because if I look at my line, it will pass my vertical line test. Okay? The graph of a line is a linear function. Okay? So I know if my equation creates a line, that equation is a linear function. Okay? Now, you guys are going to do this, but the only thing I need you to do is tell me what the range is. So you're going to fill in the table the same way using the equation, and you're going to write your y's out, and then you can tell me what the range is. Okay? Go ahead and try this one on your own. Okay, now the equation for a linear function. Sorry, I got a little lost. The equation for a linear function is y equals mx plus b. We had already talked about m is slope, b is y-intercept. So let's go ahead and look at how we can tell those are there. Okay? we're going to fill in this table the same way, and we're going to graph our line the same way. So I'm going to graph this equation. I have a bunch of x's. I'm going to plug them in, find the y's, plot the points. Okay? So I've got -4 times the -1/2 minus 3. That gives me -1. So I just do the math, simplify it, I get -1. So y is -1. Then I'm going to do -1/2 times -2 for the x minus 3. That will give me +1 minus 3. So I get -2. That's my y. Plug in 0 for the x. I get 0 minus 3 equals -3. That's my y. Plug in 2 for the x. Simplify it. And I get -4. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to plot these points. -4, -1, which is right here. -2, -2. Oh, -2, -2 is right here. 0, -3 is right here. And 2, -4 is right here. And then because it's an equation, I'm going to go ahead and connect the dots. So it creates my line. Okay? Now that I have my graph, I can figure out what the slope is. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick 2 points. It does not matter which 2 points you want to do. And do rise over run. So I'm going to start here and just go to the next point. I'm going to go down 1, which means I'm doing -1. And my rise, or my run, I'm going to go to the right 2, which is a +2. So I've got a -1 over a +2. Oh, sorry. What did I do? I picked 2 different points, I think. Yeah, I went from here to here, I think. Yeah, I went down 2 and then over 4. My bad. Where did I put this? There it is. There we go. I went down 2 and over to the right 4. Now, if you pick these two, it will give you the same thing, because I now need to reduce my fraction, and this actually equals -1 over 2, -0.5, -1/2. All of those would be okay. Okay? Now, if I look, this -1/2 that I just found myself, that is a number that is next to the x. So if you look at slope-intercept form, which is written right here, when we say m, that number next to the x is giving us our slope. Okay? Now we need to look at what the -3 represents here. Well, if we look at our graph, at -3, that's where I'm crossing the y-axis. Okay? So that means that is our y-intercept. So that number on the end, the b, is our y-intercept. Ooh, I'm so sorry. Sorry about that, guys. It's one of my dogs. I apologize. Alright, so now you guys have an equation. You're going to go ahead and try to graph the whole thing and see if you can find what the slope and the y-intercept is. Okay? Go ahead and give that a try. Here's your hint. You might be able to fill in these answers before you do any of the work. Okay? That's my one and only hint for you. So give this one a try. Now the last thing is we're just going to go ahead and identify slope and y-intercept from the equation. We kind of started doing that a little bit when we were talking about graphing. Now we're just going to go ahead and pull it straight out. So we are using, I want to use a marker right now. We are using, not a marker, why am I using a marker? So the equation is y equals mx plus b. You should write this at the top of your page. Okay? Please write that at the top of your page. Because that m is your slope. The number on the end by itself is your y-intercept. Okay? So if we look at A right now, y equals -1/5 x minus 15. The number with the x right here, that is the m part of the equation. So that means that is my slope. So -1/5 is my slope. The number on the end is the b, the y-intercept. So this number and I'm including the sign here. Always include the sign. This negative 15 is my y-intercept. Okay? Now let's look at B. We've got y equals negative 2x. Well, negative 2 is the number with the x, so that is my m, that is my slope. But there's no b, anything else here. There's nothing else after the x. So when that happens, it's there, we just need to make it visible. We have to add that in, a plus 0, because there's always going to be a y-intercept. Okay? So that number, now that we have a number on the end, that is our b, which means that is our y-intercept of 0. Okay? When you have a y-intercept of 0, that means it's crossing through the origin. Okay? And finally, you guys are going to try to find the slope and the y-intercept from the following equations. Okay? If you have any questions, please write them down. We will go over them next class. Bye!